The only one FDA approved to temporarily make frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better. The effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Do not receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow, eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Tell your doctor about your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. So give that just saw a puppy look. And whatever that look is, look like you with fewer lines. Text now to get your exclusive offer.
With one of the industry's largest catastrophe response teams, State Farm will always be among the first to arrive and the last to leave, to help show that human nature is greater than nature.
It's 150-mile-an-hour winds right now, and you never know, it could jog one way or the other.
Please monitor this situation, listen to your local authorities, and if they do issue warnings to evacuate, please heed the call.
I'm a little nervous. I just gotta trust God. We just gotta put our trust in God and pray. We just gotta take it one day as it comes, and be safe. That's all I can say, tell everybody to be safe.
Water and provisions were out. It was kind of a feeling of, hey, we need to take this seriously.
Taking it seriously, watching, preparing. If you're along the U.S. coast, it's the ready, set, go model, right? You've been ready, you're talking about your hurricane plan. You got it set over the past couple of days. If the time comes, you go, if they say so. Welcome into our special live coverage of Hurricane Dorian. Right now, a Category 4 hurricane that's likely going to bring widespread destruction to the Bahamas before inching, at least the northern Bahamas, I should clarify, before inching ever so close to the U.S. East Coast. I'm meteorologist Mark Elliott. Dorian has really been a challenging storm from the get-go when it comes to forecasting its track. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, is in the lab tonight along with me to break down the latest model guidance. He's going to be here in just a moment. But first, let's get you caught up on what we know right now. That includes that the Orlando International Airport is reversing course, saying that the airport now says that it will stay open on Monday, operating normally on Monday. Previously, Orlando International planned to cease operations at 2 a.m. on Monday. That's no longer the case. A tropical storm watch is posted for part of Florida's east coast from Deerfield Beach to Sebastian Inlet, but that doesn't mean that's the end of the advisories for coastal areas. And we expect the storm to make a turn to the north, and it's because of that, South Carolina's governor has declared a state of emergency. Want to bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. Dr. Knabb, this is an extraordinarily well-formed storm. It's been that way for a while. We haven't seen any eye wall replacement cycles. We've had this very strong, consistent wind speed for hours now. If you're in the Bahamas watching that approach, this has got to be a frightening feeling tonight.
It's terrifying, really, and I hope everybody's been able to channel that fear into preparation. And we know that the Bahamas Meteorological Service has been in direct contact with the National Hurricane Center for days. And I've interacted with the folks in the Bahamas over the years when I was at the Hurricane Center, and they're savvy. They've got plans to get people out of the most vulnerable islands and into more substantial shelter. And hopefully they're doing everything they can. Because it is going to be not just a major hurricane strike, but a long duration major hurricane event. Maximum winds at 150 miles per hour, Category 4 hurricane moving west at 8, and that pressure 940 millibars. All numbers we don't like to see. And the number that I'm concerned about getting worse is that 8. We're going to start losing numbers. It's going to go down and probably to 0 at times. It's stationary, meandering, loitering, whatever you want to call it. That's what Dorian is going to be doing near and over the northwestern Bahamas here over the next 2 to 3 days. Here's the east coast of Florida. Here's Freeport and Nassau down here. So Freeport is going to be experiencing storm surge from both sides if the Hurricane Eye goes right over them. And they're very storm surge vulnerable there, Mark.
Yeah, and if you look at that water vapor loop, there is some thunderstorms developing on that extreme outer edge, that outer band, there's going to start to be, even overnight, thunderstorms in the Bahamas.
Yeah, they'll start to get tropical storm conditions before too much longer, and it will deteriorate as the night and then the morning goes on, and then it will really get serious, and it will last such a long time. I mean, it's such a difficult experience to endure when those howling winds are going for hours and hours.
And then we got to move it forward.
Yeah, that slow motion Sunday evening, Monday evening, it's all over the northwestern Bahamas. And don't assume that it's just going to follow smoothly down the middle of this cone. There could be a stalling and meandering in here and a lot of misbehavior from the hurricane in terms of its forward motion before finally it starts to move north somewhere in this area. Could be dangerously close to, if not over, the east coast of Florida, and then watch what happens after that in the latest GFS model. This model shifted a little bit to the left, to the west, closer to the U.S. Coastline. That's why the track from the Hurricane Center hasn't shifted the other way. They've stayed kind of where they are because you got models on both sides. This GFS model takes a Matthew-like track, and there's even the H-Wharf track that comes in here. So there are models on both sides of the center of that cone, and then this GFS model depiction shows how it just kind of follows the shape of the coastline of the southeast U.S., Mark, and that could affect millions of people with winds, storm surge, and rainfall.
That is one of those, worst case scenarios that emergency managers and, FEMA, for example, use as practice cases, hoping that it never happens. But starting off in Florida, where the only evacuation routes, if they're needed, are north, basically, right? You got to get away from that storm if it comes through the whole East Coast. And then so many more people would then have to go away from the coastline for Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. That is a huge amount of people that would be in the way if a big storm like that was right on the coastline.
Yeah, and because of that weed eater kind of track, and because of wind and storm surge being in play, we got to be looking at when the winds of tropical storm force will arrive, because this is how evacuations are timed, to get people out by these times if necessary due to storm surge, and to have all your preparations done so you're not outside putting up shutters, getting supplies. We're talking, Monday night into Tuesday morning, east coast of central Florida, maybe Wednesday morning up in South Carolina as examples. So the farther north you are, the more time you have. And so use this time to prepare for the distinct possibility of at least tropical storm conditions where we have a much greater than 50-50 shot all up and down this stretch of coastline, and hurricane force winds, the chances are going up. Now, we only have tropical storm watch down here in southeast Florida because it's just not time to put up watches farther north, Mark, but that'll happen. They'll get extended farther north probably later in the day on Sunday.
That's just a function of time because it's going to be in the Bahamas for so long, and that's where residents are well aware of what's coming their way. They've been preparing in places like Freeport, rushing to fill up their cars with gas, stocking up on food and water. Shelters have opened in schools and churches for anyone that doesn't have substantial shelter, and residents of cities like Freeport spent the day making all those last-minute preparations.
We already battened up all the windows, and we got a lot of water. Make sure that we have water and food. Right now, I'm going back to the store again and get some other supplies, the last-minute supplies. And we just gotta be, take it one day as it comes, and be safe. That's all I can say. Tell everybody to be safe.
And when you see a satellite presentation, this is the water vapor technically, but a satellite presentation like this, where you look at the size of those islands, Dr. Knabb, compared to the size of this slowing hurricane, what a scary, foreboding set of images that is.
Yeah, this evokes quite the emotional response from me to look at that. I mean, if you picture yourself being in those islands and you're staring down at this monster of a hurricane, it's scary. And the driest air on that satellite image is inside the eye. I mean, it literally is warmer inside the eye than it is outside of it at the same altitude. You can get that from the aircraft data. So I fear some of these folks will be encountering the eye, but you got to go through the front end of it, and then when the eye passes, you go through the back end of it. But that's bad enough in any hurricane situation, but this front end of it could last for hours and hours, and then you'd be inside the eye for a while. And if it stalls, you could be inside the eye for a long time, knowing you have to get out of it somehow by getting the other side of it. Look at how long it takes in the GFS model here for it to cross the northwestern Bahamas. I mean, that's a slow trek. And we went through that a little bit quickly, but I'll zoom back here to show you how slow this is. All right, here it is on Sunday afternoon. There it is on Monday afternoon. There it is on Tuesday afternoon. It takes forever to get through the northwestern Bahamas, and then finally, eventually, it'll clear those folks. But what a long duration event that's going to be. And you know, also again, to highlight that stalling systems in places like the Bahamas can misbehave. This was the track of Hurricane Joaquin when it was forecast to move north at every one of these points, and it just wouldn't do it. I mean, so we can expect the unexpected from Dorian when it's sitting over the Bahamas, but we can also expect some very devastating storm surge, not just major hurricane force winds.
The movement of the eye of Dorian has been fairly consistently over the past several hours due west. But that's not always the case when you see the motion on one of the National Hurricane Center advisories. It's a smoothed out over several hours track of that eye, because there's often these small moves and changes that is going to have to be part of the story as this thing stalls out. It's not going to just sit. It's going to be kind of pinwheeling around itself and meandering around.
Yeah, this is the last night that Dorian is going to have well-defined steering currents. You know, it's moving west at a persistent pace right now, but those steering currents by tomorrow are going to collapse. And it might sit still for hours at a time, but it might also meander and move around in ways we can't really predict. When steering currents collapse, the hurricane just kind of wanders around, and it might wobble, it might loop, but a slow-moving hurricane lengthens the duration of the winds, it lengthens the duration and the ability to push storm surge onto normally dry ground. And look at, we're going to be measuring storm surge in feet, we might be measuring rainfall in feet. I mean, too much water to deal with in the Bahamas in this event.
Is there anything that you'll be watching for in the Bahamas that will give you any sort of clue as to what happens down the road? Any clues for the U.S. impacts, for example?
Yeah, sure, because if you look at some of the alternative tracks from the European ensemble, and I'll try to bring that up really quickly to answer that question because it's a really good one. When you look at what could happen over the Bahamas, the European ensemble tracks account for some of these various possibilities. Look at all of this meandering around down here, including a few tracks that loop south and then into the Florida Peninsula, or they loop around and come ashore on the east coast of Florida, farther south than we would like, but also some looping around and then coming out the other way. And then you have a track much farther offshore. So what it does down here in terms of its meandering and where it catches its ride north could mean all the difference for what happens in Florida.
Yeah, so maybe that, you know, that solution that goes into Miami or the Keys really is not the most likely scenario.
No, it is not.
But it's not a guarantee that that isn't the right scenario.
But is it headed northwestward when it leaves the Bahamas, or is it headed northward or northeastward?
Yeah.
And you know, how long it spends down there could determine, you know, which car of the train it gets on when it's taken north.
Unfortunately for the Bahamas, the longer it stays there, the better chances that exit ramp opens up and protects the U.S.
Yeah.
So you might be in, say, in South Carolina, in Jacksonville, in Georgia, in South Carolina, in Florida, in North Carolina, hoping for a long time in the Bahamas.
Yes.
So that it has a way out and away from where you are. Now, we bring up Jacksonville because there are going to be impacts in Jacksonville, even if the eye stays way off the coast. We've seen this before when it comes to these types of big storms. The ocean impacts are a huge part of the story. Jacksonville is a special case because a river goes right through the city, and the river can have storm surge back up into the area. But how close does it get to Jacksonville, Dr. Nab? Let's talk about the big steering flow, what we're looking for to help determine where this hurricane eventually moves to.
Yeah, and it's first important for everybody to realize that hurricanes don't have their own steering wheel. Dorian isn't going to have any say, really, in where it goes. It's a tall, big system that's going to be steered by the larger systems around it. And the key player is this ridge of high pressure off to the north that increasingly is going to be situated farther to the east. And watch how this ridge to its north that is steering it west right now, this is going to weaken and collapse.
And so as that high bends closer to me, it gets real kind of skinny and narrow, and there isn't a lot of help to show you where that storm will go. It sits down here for a while and then eventually gets picked up by a trough.
Yeah, I want to go back and I can show you that again. Now watch how this breaks down and then opens up, and watch how this high goes around to the east. And it finds an opening between that high and higher pressure over the continental United States. Look at that weakness in the ridge. So, but at this point, it's still kind of in no man's land. It doesn't have a good current, but eventually this troughing should pick it up, and this ridge will eventually push it northward.
And so
there's the opening.
Yeah, there's the opening. This is a look at the European. So this one's a little bit further offshore as compared to the USGFS, but still very close. It means some surge, especially as you get up towards the Carolinas.
It's going to be in these weak steering currents tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. It is so hard to pinpoint where it will be relative to these steering features when it gets far enough north to catch that ride. And that's why we can't tell you if it'll go right along the east coast of Florida or farther offshore.
It is the million-dollar question. I know so many of you are watching us tonight saying, well, is it going to be on the coastline or not? The answer is yes at this point. It is either going to be on the coastline or not. You know, we've been talking a lot about long lines and shortages of gas in Florida. It didn't take long for us to see those long lines start forming in South Carolina today. This is video of drivers waiting to fill up in Charleston, South Carolina. And so there have been some gas shortages across Florida. The Miami area, for example, the latest 52% still out of fuel. This is according to GasBuddy.com. But, you know, look at the Tampa area, 41% there. West Palm, 43%. Orlando, 38%. What this shows you is that people took this seriously and gassed up their cars and got ready. The other thing it shows you is that the numbers are better than they were even a few hours ago. So there are still new tankers coming in with gasoline. You still have time to prepare, even in Florida.
Here's your Buick, sir. Actually, that's my Buick.
Your Buick doesn't have a roof rack. This is my Buick.
How are we gonna fit in your mom's Buick?
Easy.
I like that new Buick.
Me too.
I was actually talking about that Buick.
I knew that.
Did you?
Buick's fresh new lineup is full of surprises. It's Labor Day weekend. Discover the new Buick lineup. Current eligible non-GM owners and lessees get 20% below MSRP on most 2019 Buick Encore models.
As parents, no one wants to get that phone call where your child has been diagnosed with cancer. Even as his father and as close as we are, I couldn't imagine being in his shoes. He's taught me that you can get through anything. I can't express enough how much I appreciate every single thing that St. Jude has done. At no cost means everything.
With one of the industry's largest catastrophe response teams, State Farm will always be among the first to arrive and the last to leave, to help show that human nature is greater than nature.
Delicious high-fiber Raisin Bran.
Sure you don't want me to come with you?
I'm very sure.
Because I can. Make good choices.
You make good choices.
I am. Fiber's good for digestive health.
Good choices never tasted so good. Raisin Bran.
Bear presents A Job Well Done. Painting be done and stay done. Bear, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction with interior paints. Right now, get incredible savings on Bear, exclusively at the Home Depot.
Try Target same-day delivery. Deliver to your door so you can do more. More thrill. More skill. More chill. Target run and done.
Frank Thomas, a.k.a. the Big Hurt, used to keep pretty busy on the baseball field, but now he's busier than ever.
After I turned 40, it wasn't easy to keep up. Everything changed. My energy, my drive. Then I found Nugenix Total T.
New Nugenix Total T is our most powerful man-boosting formula ever because it boosts your free testosterone and your total testosterone. To get your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, text SEEK to 231231.
Nugenix helped me feel better. I feel stronger. I have more energy. I have the energy and the stamina and the strength. It makes me feel awesome.
From the brand that brought you GNC's #1 vitality product, new Nugenix Total T helps provide even more energy, performance, testosterone, and muscle-boosting ingredients for even better results.
With Nugenix Total T, 40 was just another number.
Text SEEK to 231231 now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. That's SEEK to 231231.
This is epic.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
We are live on the ground. Right now, it's coming down.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 68 degrees under clear sky. Clouds with scattered thunderstorms. High 83. Chance of Sunday night. Variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 64. Winds light and variable. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel as we are tracking Dorian tonight. Here with you live, taking a live look at Flagler Beach, Florida. The waves rolling in slowly. Just what a different scene this is going to be over the next couple of days. Even if it's just the ocean, it is going to be an angry ocean out there, my friends, with all kinds of foam and big-time waves because there is a huge hurricane that is going to be somewhere off the Florida coast. I wish we could tell you exactly how far, if far at all, right? It might be right upon the coastline. But those details are not completely ironed out yet. You might be saying, but it's so close. I mean, we can almost see it from Florida, right? Well, the reasoning is because it's going to stay here over the northern Bahamas for about 2.5 days. So even though it seems so close to Florida that we should be having watches, if not warnings up at this point, that's not the case right now. It's a Category 4 storm, 150 mile-per-hour winds, pressure still at 940 millibars and moving west at 8, but that forward speed is going to slow down. It's why we only have a few watches and tropical storm watches, not hurricane watches yet. Vero Beach down through Boca. And again, this will likely change. It will expand much further north. There will be the need for more advisories, dependent on when that turn north takes place, of course. But if you look at the forecast track, for 2 days or so, a turn north eventually occurs. It is important to look both at where the center of that track is, but also where the extent of that track goes, because we know that once you get to day 4 and day 5, which is what these lines are up here, the average error in the positioning for that center point is approaching or even exceeding down the line 200 miles. That is a huge difference. That is a difference between the Virginia-North Carolina border in the center of the state to so far offshore that you don't even feel the wind in Wilmington. Okay, so a huge, huge discrepancy when it comes to that far out in time. And so you just have to keep watching. There can be big changes to the track in either direction at this point. Now is the time to continue to prepare and be ready if the forecast track is determined to be a bad one for your area. And that means you have to prepare in a place like Charleston, too. It is definitely one of those flood-prone areas that can see flooding in, say, Market Street even on the best of weather days during high tide at this point. Add in a major hurricane just off the coast, and of course there's going to be flood problems. Dr. Knabb, that's just the ocean impact, but when you add potentially a half-foot plus of rain, again highly dependent on the track, but add some heavy rain that's trying to exit to the coast at the same point as the water's trying to get pushed in, that is a flood recipe right there.
Yeah, every tropical depression, storm, hurricane, major hurricane poses a rainfall-induced flood problem. And just about every landfalling or close to landfalling system in the U.S. causes at least one fatality due to inland flooding. And it's been the deadliest aspect of all of the recent hurricanes that have been hitting the United States. So we've got to treat this hazard very, very importantly, not just focus on the wind and the category. Now, even tomorrow into Monday morning, we're going to start to see some loosely associated rains that could bring a little bit of a flood risk on the east coast of Florida in the very, very far-flung outer bands. And then Monday into Tuesday, the risk starts to increase. So this is just the beginnings of it. So if you can imagine, with the center of the system over the northwestern Bahamas, we could start to see some flash flood risk along the east coast of Florida, eastern half of the peninsula. That's just Monday. Then when you go beyond that time and we make the turn to the north, the closer that it is to the coast, the greater the rainfall risk will be. And you got to realize that track is so influential on where the heaviest rain falls. The European model, we'll get a new one here in the next hour or two, but the latest European model is farther offshore than the GFS, but it does make it to the Carolinas anyway. Here's that 18Z GFS run, and we'll show you the new one here before too much longer, but this is closer to the coast and gets to the Carolinas a little sooner and spends more time over land. So if you compare the rainfall forecast from these two models, the European model has all the rainfall in the next few days offshore, but then it brings up to a half a foot or more of heavy rainfall. Where? In North Carolina, the place that doesn't want to see another heavy rainfall episode. And if you don't like the European solution, you're going to like the GFS even less, because the heavy rainfall extends farther inland and you get the higher amounts, exceeding a foot in some places. Wow, do we not want to see this again? And of course, if it ends up being closer to the coast than this, then the rainfall amounts could be greater in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. And those are all possibilities when you consider the European model ensemble tracks. But if we can catch a break and something on the right side of these possibilities happens, that would lessen the rainfall problem. But if you consider how recently we've had some record-setting tropical cyclone rainfall events, Florence set state records for both North Carolina and South Carolina. We don't want to even come close to repeating that. But Mark, it's amazing when you consider we've had Matthew in 2016, Florence in 2018, and we're staring down the possibility of a 2019 inland flood mess in the Carolinas. Boy, we hope we can avoid this somehow.
Yeah, it seems like the Carolinas have been just overdone with regards to tropical rains the past few years. Let's hope we can avoid it somehow on this one. People living along Florida's east coast need to remain vigilant as well tonight. And we come back, we're going to explain why we could see very dangerous conditions along the coast, from damaging surge to damaging surf.
This program brought to you by Otezla. Learn more at otezla.com.
If you have moderate to severe psoriasis, little things can be a big deal. That's Otezla. Otezla is not a cream. It's a pill that treats plaque psoriasis differently. With Otezla, severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts, or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Tell your doctor about your medicines and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla, show more of you.
What's better than one night of Olive Garden? How about two? All new $5 take-home entrees. Enjoy any meal here, then take home an all-time favorite like fettuccine Alfredo for just $5 more. Hurry in for $5 take-home entrees, only at Olive Garden.
Work's more fulfilling, carpool's more fun.
and tastes fresher. Glad I brought more than one.
Take the feeling with you. Sabra Snackers. Feel good food.
I just had Sabra hummus and now I feel good.
Well, it finally happened, Zachary. Somebody burned down my she shed.
The she shed was struck by lightning.
Is my she shed covered by State Farm?
Your she shed's covered, Cheryl.
That's wonderful news.
Home insurance trusted by more people than any other. State Farm.
Feel the clarity of non-drowsy Claritin and relief from symptoms caused by over 200 indoor and outdoor allergens, like those from Buddy. Live Claritin Clear. For 1 week only, save up to $36 on select Claritin products. Check this Sunday's newspaper for details.
I'm Jimmy Dean, and I wish I could tell you how I feel about a morning like this. And that includes a good hearty breakfast. You need something to kind of warm the whole body up and get it going. It's a great way to kick off your day.
I don't keep track of regrets, and I don't add up the years. But what I do count on is Boost.
Delicious Boost High Protein Nutritional Drink has 20 grams of protein, along with 26 essential vitamins and minerals. Boost High Protein. Be up for life.
Would you like to try a burger made with plants?
Plants.
It's delicious, and I am a kid, so if I like it...
Morningstar Farms, America's favorites, made from plants.
Yes, I'm doing it all. The water, the exercise, the fiber. Month after month, and I still have belly pain and recurring constipation. So I asked my doctor what else I could do, and I said yes to Linzess.
Linzess treats adults with IBS with constipation or chronic constipation. Linzess is not a laxative. It works differently. It helps relieve belly pain and lets you have more frequent and complete bowel movements. Do not give Linzess to children less than 6, and it should not be given to children 6 to less than 18. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stool.
Look at this. This was the view earlier in Hopetown, Italy, right? But if this doesn't show you that we have a slow-moving storm on our hands, because this was just earlier today, with a Category 4 hurricane really not all that far away, but it's not quite there yet. I think later tonight we start getting the outer fringes, and it really goes downhill starting tomorrow. Unfortunately, Dr. Nab, it could last a long time in the Bahamas. Thanks for sticking with us here on the Weather Channel as we track Hurricane Dorian. Again, I'm meteorologist Mark Elliott, joined tonight with hurricane expert Dr. Rick Nab. Slow motion means terrible outcomes. Then we have to determine where it goes from there, which flow. There's nothing to say this is going to be a slam dunk. It's going this way at this time. We don't have that with this storm.
Yeah, with the hurricane just on the other side of the Bahamas, you know, folks in Florida are probably thinking, don't you know by now if it's coming to Florida or not? The problem is it's not the distance that matters, it's the time that matters, and the time that it's going to be meandering, stalling, looping, whatever it's going to do down in the southwest Bahamas for 2 or 3 days lengthens the time between now and when potential Florida impacts will occur, and it brings forth all kinds of possibilities and things that could change between now and then to determine whether or not it's coming to Florida. If this was a fast-moving hurricane, we might be talking about, well, in a day from now, this is coming to shore in Florida. You know, this is a totally different scenario from that. There's just so much it'll do between now and any potential Florida impacts. Max winds at 150 miles an hour right now. This could go through some ups and downs over the next few days, but we're expecting this to remain a powerful major hurricane during its stay over the northwestern Bahamas. And this is a scary sight. Look at the orange inside there is the dry, warm, sinking air inside the eye, and the outer bands of it are really starting to arrive in the northwestern Bahamas. The weather will deteriorate overnight into tomorrow morning, and then this part of the track will be very, very slow. This is Sunday evening, Monday evening, Tuesday evening, and don't assume that it's going to go right down the middle of this track nice and slow and smooth. It's going to be perhaps stalling at times, and we just don't count on hurricanes when the steering currents collapse, like could surprise us and do some things we don't expect, and is hard to pinpoint. And what it does after that, we have a lot of possibilities. Here's Sunday, Monday, and then into Tuesday, slowly moving out of the northwestern Bahamas, but then it could be very close to the east coast of central Florida. And in the latest GFS model, it's quite close to the southeast coast of the U.S. all the way into Wednesday. And here in this particular run, it's barreling into North Carolina on Thursday, Mark.
Yeah, the newest run is coming in right now, and it's so close to Florida, it's close to Georgia, close enough that there will be, at a minimum, coastal impacts.
Yeah.
Again, that's just one model that we're looking at. And then it comes even more barreling into North Carolina, which means even more people there would face rainfall impacts as well.
Yeah, so southern part of east coast of Florida, we're talking Monday arrival of the weather, and as maybe late Tuesday in northern Florida into Wednesday up in South Carolina.
Yeah, so in Florida, people are not out of the woods just yet. And really, regardless of a direct landfall there or not, we know that there could be very dangerous coastal conditions. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens with the coastline when a storm is approaching. And really, the characteristics of the ocean floor really help determine what happens right along the coastal edge as well.
Yeah, they do. The Bahamas is a very shallow area, but then right off the southeast coast of Florida, the water's pretty deep, so you don't get storm surge going way inland, but you can get a lot of waves. Farther north you go, the wider the continental shelf becomes. In the open ocean, Dorian is going toward the southeast U.S. coast, even while it's centered down there in the Bahamas. But then, depending and high surf event and beach erosion and all that, if this comes through this area, we could be talking storm surge as well. So a major hurricane pushes the water toward the coastline and onto normally dry ground. The stronger the hurricane, the bigger the hurricane, the closer it is to land, the more that it can do that. And again, if you look at the GFS track, I want to show this again because how it could be a storm surge problem along this track, Mark. This is potentially going to produce similar reminiscent impacts of what we saw in Matthew a few years ago. So this is a time where you need to at least be considering that you might need to evacuate and know your evacuation zones. The farther north you go, the farther inland they go. And then, gosh, in Jacksonville, you got the St. Johns River that could be susceptible to storm surge. And then Georgia, it can go way inland as well.
It is surge that determines those evacuations. That's why we're talking about that. You need to remain on alert tonight in the southeast with all the updates right here.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
So you have 10 years experience.
I do.
But no PhD.
First kid?
Here's all the numbers, food's in the fridge. Oh, and Lucas likes to pull on jewelry, so you might want to lose the nose ring.
By their second kid, parents are more likely to choose Loves. Live, learn, and get Loves.
This is your wake-up call. If you have moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis, month after month, the clock is ticking on irreversible joint damage. Ongoing pain and stiffness are signs of joint erosion. Humira can help stop the clock. Prescribed for 15 years, Humira targets and blocks a source of inflammation that contributes to joint pain and irreversible damage.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Help stop the clock on further irreversible joint damage. Talk to your rheumatologist. Right here, right now. Humira.
COPD makes it hard to breathe. So to breathe better, I started with Onoro.
COPD tries to say, go this way. I say, I'll go my own way with Onoro.
Once daily Onoro contains 2 medicines called bronchodilators that work together to significantly improve lung function all day and all night. Anoro is not for asthma. It contains a type of medicine that increases risk of death in people with asthma. The risk is unknown in COPD. Anoro won't replace rescue inhalers for sudden symptoms and should not be used more than once a day. Tell your doctor if you have a heart condition, high blood pressure, glaucoma, prostate, bladder, or urinary problems. These may worsen with Anoro. Call your doctor if you have worsened breathing, chest pain, mouth or tongue swelling, problems urinating, vision changes, or eye pain while taking Anoro.
Ask your doctor about once daily Anoro to start treating your COPD.
Save at Anoro.com.
DiGiorno pizza bakes fresh in your own oven and travels straight to your table. Unlike delivery that goes from oven to box to bag to car to traffic to wrong houses. Nobody delivers a piping hot and crispy crust like a DiGiorno pizza. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Exactly. Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Nice. But, what's up with your partner?
Not again. Mimo, that's your reflection. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Son, I need to tell you something. What is it, Dad?
Dos Equis is brewed in the style of Pilsner lagers. Also, me and your mom are getting divorced.
Special moments with Dos Equis. Keep it interessante.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel. We are tracking a very dangerous storm. Hurricane Dorian, a Category 4 with 150 miles per hour for those top winds. Those winds are, of course, highest right near the center, near that eye and in the eye wall, lowering with speed with distance. So if you're, looking at the northern Bahamas with this storm approaching, winds are basically calm there, no different than any other night. And yet you're looking off to the east at a monster of a storm barreling towards you that has the potential of stopping over the islands over the next couple of days. So a very frightening prospect indeed. Eventually, this does get closer to the U.S. coastline, and because of that, tropical storm watches have been issued for Vero Beach to Boca and just about everywhere in between. There will be more further north in particular, and there will likely be the need for warnings at some point, dependent on the track of the storm, of course. But this is a function of time. Because it hangs out in the northern Bahamas so long, we don't have that trigger yet for the amount of time for watches or warnings to be issued for the U.S. coastline. Latest track is issued by the National Hurricane Center at the 11 o'clock advisory Eastern time. Shows you those wind speeds through the Bahamas are just frighteningly strong, 140 to 150 miles per hour for 2 to 2.5 days. Then a turn northbound. How close it is to the U.S. coast is still a question mark. We're watching models coming in tonight that still show an eerily close approach to the Florida coast, Georgia coast, and then eventually into the Carolinas. There are variations on those models that bring the storm inland into Florida. Or, on the other side of the coin, turn north much sooner and never approach the U.S. coast. We can hope for that outcome, but it is not a guarantee. So as we look at the tropical storm force winds, and I bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Nab, tonight, wind is such a huge part of this story because it is such a strong starting point. There are times where you could say, okay, worry about the waves and the storm surge, and the winds will be, part of the story, but not the biggest factor. But once you get into major hurricane and top-end major hurricane status, winds are a big part of the story, too.
Yeah, and that wind timing that you just showed is important because that's the time by which you have to have all your preparations done for wind and water. You got to have evacuations done by these times. You got to have your shutters or plywood up by these times. You got to have your supplies bought by these times and in your safe place, because when winds of tropical storm force arrive, then it's just too dangerous to be outside.
So, a former life as National Hurricane Center director, talking with emergency managers, and they're seeing a map like this one or really any of the others that give you that timing, especially in Florida where there's only one way out. How soon difficult decisions to suggest evacuations?
Yeah, that size of the community. Larger metropolitan areas have to start evacuating a lot sooner than the smaller communities. And so you got to get ready for the storm surge, you got to get ready for the wind. And when we look at what winds could occur, the chances of tropical storm force winds are much greater than 50-50 along most of the east coast of Florida and into Georgia and the South Carolina coastline. And the hurricane force wind speed probabilities, and again, this is taking into account all kinds of tracks and intensities. The reason these probabilities of hurricane force aren't higher is because there's a possibility that the track is far enough offshore that you don't get those hurricane force winds, but some of those probabilities are taking into account that you could get a direct hit from a major hurricane.
And again, a function of time. As we get closer and we're more certain, those numbers will either go up considerably, or if there's a track much further out to sea, they could, in theory, go down. Usually, once they start getting painted 4 or 5 days out, they go up at least a little bit.
Yeah, but to get ready for wind, think about sheltering, thinking about how you can get through a power outage.
And then we talked about that turn to the north. Once the storm turns north, you're looking at the potential for coastal impacts like what we saw potentially from Matthew. Importantly, because Matthew did not make landfall in Florida. This is Jacksonville Beach. There was not a landfall here, but that's certainly an impact.
Look at that storm surge coming in. It devastated the dunes along Jacksonville Beach, and then the storm surge came onshore down some of these streets. And I toured that beach after the hurricane departed, and the emergency managers showed me how the dunes were just obliterated along that stretch of coastline. We could be looking at this again if Dorian comes as close, if not closer, than Matthew did.
So there is that potential to have a track that's similar to Matthew in a lot of ways, and that means that there could be impacts to places Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. Remember, Matthew did not make a landfall until South Carolina, but Florida and Georgia certainly had real devastating consequences nonetheless.
Yeah, there's a decent chance that Dorian will do something different than Matthew. We're not saying it'll be exactly the same, but we can learn some lessons. The main one being that you don't have to have landfall in places like Florida and Georgia to have multiple fatalities like we did with Matthew. And we had 1.5 million customers lose power, and there was widespread coastal damage from waves and storm surge, including here on Flagler Beach, where the waves pounded the coastline, obliterated the dune structure, and took out roads completely. And also on the Florida coast, storm surge got into some restaurants and people's homes.
Talk about an economic impact of a holiday weekend and all the cancellations that happened, the beach replenishment, the roads that were repaired a couple years ago after Matthew, and the prospect of damage again. Stay with us. We'll continue to follow this story right here.
With one of the industry's largest catastrophe response teams, State Farm will always be among the first to arrive and the last to leave, to help show that human nature is greater than nature.
Delicious high-fiber Raisin Bran.
Sure you don't want me to come with you?
I'm very sure.
Because I can. Make good choices.
You make good choices.
I am. Fiber's good for digestive health.
Good choices never tasted so good. Raisin Bran.
You know that look? That life of the party look. Walk it off look. 1 more mile look. Reply all look. Own your look with fewer lines. There's only one Botox cosmetic. It's the only one FDA approved to temporarily make frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better. The effects of Botox cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Do not receive Botox cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow, eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Tell your doctor about your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. So give that just saw a puppy look. And whatever that look is, look like you with fewer lines. Text now to get your exclusive offer.
Now get 50% off all Domino's pizzas when you order online. 50% off sausage pizzas, handmade pan pizzas, even barbecue banana pepper pizzas. If you're into that, this week only get 50% off the menu price of 34 million pizza combinations at Domino's.com.
This is the story of John Smith. Not this John Smith, or this John Smith, or any of the other hundreds of John Smiths that are Humana Medicare Advantage members. No, It's this John Smith, who met with Humana to create a personalized care plan. At Humana, we have more ways to care for your health, and we find one that works just for you, no matter what your name is.
Men, want to feel younger, stronger, leaner? You don't have to slow down after 40. Frank Thomas found the secret to staying in shape with the energy and drive of his 20s.
Man, you look like you could still hit it a mile.
I feel great too.
What gives?
After 40, men slow down. It's harder to stay in shape.
Why?
Our free testosterone levels drop. It happened to me. And then I found Nugenix Total T.
New Nugenix Total T is our most powerful man-boosting formula ever because it boosts your free testosterone and your total testosterone. Nugenix Total T helps provide even more energy, performance, testosterone, and muscle-boosting ingredients for even better results. To get your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, text PEP to 231231. Samples are not available in stores.
Well, wait. Well, you can do something about it now.
I gotta try Nugenix Total T.
Text PEP to 231231. Now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. That's PEP to 231231.
This is epic!
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got severe weather threat.
We are live on the ground. Right now it's coming down.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 67 degrees under clear skies. Tonight, partly cloudy with a slight chance of thunderstorms overnight. Low 62. Chance of rain 30%. Sunday, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. High 83. Chance of rain 50%. Sunday night, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 64. Winds light and variable. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel. We've been asking you on social media to submit any questions that you have about this storm using the hashtag Hurricane Questions. We have some time here to answer some of those that have been coming in throughout the show. So let's start things out with some of those questions and hopefully, Dr. Nab, some good answers as well. This is coming in from, it looks like Dr. Poker, saying, spent the last few days hearing the cone where the center would go is not gospel, that 1/3 of hurricanes go outside the cone. Now we seem to ignore that a good portion of the cone is still on Florida. Is there a chance that the center makes landfall in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the question there is really articulating is how the sense of things out there has changed. When you look at what people are saying on social media and the conversations out there, when the models shifted from going mostly onto the Florida Peninsula, a lot of them shifted to the east, there was a tendency out there for people to breathe a sigh of relief without realizing that, number one, the cone still covers Florida, and number two, models can shift back the other way, and we're seeing that happen. So it's always been the case that 3-, 4-, and 5-day forecasts have significant uncertainties, and Dorian has proved that to be the case. More changes could happen, either for the better, farther offshore, or for the worse, closer to the coast.
So at one point, Orlando International announced no flights Monday starting at 2 a.m. Monday morning. Tonight, they announced that they're going to have normal operations Monday. The forecast cone, sure, it changed a little bit, and maybe it's less likely that Florida has a hit right up the peninsula, but there are models that bring some impacts all the way through central Florida still.
Yeah, and that slow motion over the northwestern Bahamas has complicated and delayed some things, and it's the reason why, as close as Dorian already is to Florida, just on the other side of the northwestern Bahamas, it's not super close in time. It's going to take 2 or 3 days for it to get through the northwestern Bahamas, and between now and then a lot could change, and especially when you get into that Monday night into Tuesday time frame, things could start going downhill on the east coast of Florida if it doesn't go our way.
Can't wait until then, when it's a certainty that you might get something, to then start preparing. You got to prepare now. Let's get into another question coming in using that hashtag, Hurricane Questions. This from Renee says, will Hurricane Dorian impact Charleston, South Carolina? If so, what will the impacts be?
Well, we certainly
don't you wish you could answer for
Yeah,
every specific town up and down the coast?
Yeah, so obviously we can't tell you exactly what will happen when, but we can tell you what you're at risk for and what the chances are. Is there a chance that the hurricane passes far enough offshore that the impacts are essentially waves and rip currents? That's possible. It's also possible that Charleston takes the direct hit from the core of Dorian. And in terms of the hazards, Charleston is at risk for tropical storm or maybe even hurricane force winds, high waves, and maybe even storm surge that could prompt evacuations. So find out your evacuation zone, and the possibility of locally heavy rainfall that could cause inland flooding. And Mark, remember how much Charleston experienced impacts from even Irma that went up the Florida Peninsula, and from Matthew. They got a little bit fortunate in Charleston that some of the impacts were worse farther north, farther south down the coast. But how vulnerable Charleston is, even if you don't have a landfall, how much the wind and water could be significant hazards, life-threatening even in Charleston.
We've mentioned that before. They're a flood-prone city even on the best of days just because of high tide. And so then you add a hurricane to the mix, it can be just as bad, if not worse, of course.
Take it seriously there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take another question in from you guys directly, saying from Coasterland, saying, why do eyewall replacement cycles occur, and should people expect this phenomenon from Dorian? Dr. Naba, I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen any, double eyewalls or eyewall changes already from this storm.
Yeah, eyewall replacement cycles are typical in major hurricanes, but they don't all occur with the same frequency, and they're very difficult to predict. Some hurricanes maintain their current structure, like Dorian has all day today, for multiple days, but more commonly they go through these cycles, and that has to do with fluid dynamics, and that's a whole hour lecture on why it occurs. But here's the upshot, though. What can happen is that the internal eyewall can contract and then dissipate, and then a larger exterior eyewall can form at a larger radius. This one goes away, and then a larger one chokes it off and takes over. Then it weakens because the tighter circulation is gone, but then you have a weaker but larger hurricane. Katrina went through that, Floyd went through that, and they weaken, but it's not all good news because they end up being larger. So if Dorian weakens, don't say, oh, this is great, because it might be a larger hurricane.
Yeah, and with its slow motion, a larger hurricane isn't what you want at this point. Then it lasts even longer.
Yeah, and then larger hurricanes are big storm surge producers too.
Absolutely. All right, we got time for another one here. Coming in through that hashtag, Hurricane Questions. Charles saying Hurricane Wilma in 2005 had that eye wall of 2.5 miles with 185 miles per hour at its peak. Then I think the wall got bigger at some point. Does the eye wall size determine how strong a hurricane will be? We touched on that just now.
Yeah, now Wilma had this really tiny eye, and then eventually that internal eye wall dissipated, and then it went over land, and it became a weaker, bigger hurricane. This one, Dorian, has an eye that's 15, 20 miles across, something like that. Again, it could lose that internal eye, and then a larger one could take over. And again, like we said, could become a bigger hurricane.
Yeah. What you can say is that once it has an eye, you get a stronger hurricane. That we know for sure. We're going to answer a couple more of these questions coming up right after the break.
If you have moderate to severe psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, little things can be a big deal. That's why there's Otezla. Otezla is not an injection or a cream. It's a pill that treats differently. For psoriasis, 75% clearer skin is achievable with reduced redness, thickness, and scaliness of plaques. For psoriatic arthritis, Otezla is proven to reduce joint swelling, tenderness, and pain, and the Otezla prescribing information has no requirement for routine lab monitoring. Don't use if you're allergic to Otezla. It may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts, or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Tell your doctor about your medicines and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla, show more of you.
with all-day comfort for all-day fun. Depend FitFlex underwear features maximum absorbency, ultra-soft fabric, and new beautiful designs for your best comfort and protection guaranteed. Life's better when you're in it. Be there with Depend.
My body is truly powerful.
I have the power to lower my blood sugar and A1C.
Because I can still make my own insulin, and Trulicity activates my body to release it, like it's supposed to. Trulicity is for people with type 2 diabetes. It's not insulin. I take it once a week. It starts acting in my body from the first dose.
Trulicity isn't for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Don't take Trulicity if you're allergic to it, you or your family have medullary thyroid cancer, or have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction, a lump or swelling in your neck, or severe stomach pain. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases low blood sugar risk. Side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, belly pain, and decreased appetite, which lead to dehydration and may worsen kidney problems.
I have it within me to lower my A1C.
Ask your doctor about Trulicity.
To be their best, kids need good nutrition and practice. Lots of practice. Get them started right with Carnation Breakfast Essentials. It has protein plus vitamins and minerals to help kids be their best. Carnation Breakfast Essentials.
Now get 50% off all Domino's pizzas when you order online. 50% off sausage pizzas, handmade pan pizzas, even barbecue banana pepper pizzas. If you're into that, this week only get 50% off the menu price of 34 million pizza combinations at Domino's.com.
With one of the industry's largest catastrophe response teams, State Farm will always be among the first to arrive and the last to leave, to help show that human nature is greater than nature.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel as we are tracking Dorian, and if you are just watching, we are answering some of your questions that were coming in on social media, and we want to answer a couple more. We've got a few minutes left to get through as many of these as we can. So it's a rapid fire round, Dr. Nab, from Lucas, saying Hurricane Jean in 2004 drifted off the coast, almost the same track, and then made a loop back and hit the Treasure Coast. Any chance Dorian could do the same?
Well, Hurricane Jean did a loop farther east than Dorian is now. There it is on the far right, and it came in straight across the northwestern Bahamas and straight into the east coast of Florida. Dorian is not going to be moving quickly across the northwestern Bahamas. It's going to stall there and then turn right. Close to the east coast of Florida or farther away? That's the question.
But big storms can do loops. I think that is the point here, that there can be some loop-to-loops
Dorian could do smaller loops over the northwest Bahamas.
All right, let's take the next question in. This one's from Vanessa, saying, is it worse to be on the left side or the right side of a hurricane?
Generally speaking, it's worse to be on the right-hand side. You usually have stronger winds on the right side, but especially at the coast relative to storm surge, you don't want to be on the right-hand side, the onshore flow side. But the left side can be bad. In Matthew, the left side of the hurricane was devastating in terms of the inland flooding.
And we've got time for one more question tonight, so let's take that one right now. It says from Chris, will Hurricane Dorian have any effect on the Orlando area?
It could. I mean, there's a chance of tropical storm force winds. If you believe the HWRF model, maybe it comes ashore on the east coast of central Florida and you get more than that. You could have some inland flooding if the rains come your way as well.
All right, so we'll continue to watch all those new model runs from overnight, and our round-the-clock coverage starts off tomorrow morning.
This morning.
Yeah, that's right. It's this morning on the East Coast anyway. It's after midnight, of course. For the rest of you, it is starting in the morning, along with our team of meteorologists already on the coast.
And now your tropical update. Here's the latest advisory. A look from above. The latest forecast track.
Serious right there, boy.
In almost every corner of the earth.
It's gonna hit the
shock. Watch out.
Every moment of every day.
Damn. Oh my God.
Cameras are rolling on the most heart-stopping, gut-wrenching, awe-inspiring.
This is insane.
Weather out there.
We don't really know how to react.
Look at that, dude.
So we wind up mesmerized.
You can't pull away.
This is reality TV.
You think you know your weather? Our team breaks down the science behind the storm.
You can see the water flowing into the vortex.
Inside the most shocking viral videos that will blow your mind. Fierce winds and relentless rain. Being on the front line of a coastal storm can be brutal. And if you live in Asia, you face